Okay. Thank you very much for coming in from the food and the sunshine. So this panel is about media and marketing in the legal cannabis industry. Some of you guys may be aware that this is the 40th anniversary of the miners' strikes in the UK, and here on this panel we've got some experts who have been working at the coalface of media and marketing in the cannabis industry for many, many years, probably in some cases for longer than they want to remember. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in a moment, but just before we do that, and just for their benefit, can we just have a show of hands in the audience of those of you who are currently marketing a product or service in the cannabis industry right now? And of those, consumer product or B2B? So more B2B, I think. And then those of you who are thinking of launching a product or service? Okay, so a couple. Okay, so well, before we get started, can I ask the panelists to introduce themselves? Maybe Mika, we can start with you, just in terms of your background and your general approach to marketing and media in cannabis.
Yeah, my name is Michael Knot. I come from Germany. I'm a freelance journalist, writing for Vice magazine, other magazines, published a book about, first German book about cannabis extraction, and I'm running a YouTube channel about cannabis education since 15 years, meanwhile. No, 18 years. I'm running this YouTube channel. So yeah, I'm quite deep into cannabis marketing. I used to be when it was illegal, and now that it's legal as a medicine, I'm also very busy with cannabis marketing in Germany since 2017.
Great, thank you so much. Petra, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
My name is Petra Marinko. I come from Slovenia. I'm the CEO, founder, and owner of Nabi brand. You've probably heard of. We've been on many shows here, and we choose a bit different approach on how we want to sell our products, how we want to present our products, and I'm really happy to be here and share some of our stuff with you. We started this 6.5 years ago, 7 years ago. And my background comes from architecture, so I chose similar architectural approach to building a brand and building and making products, producing products. So I don't deal with electricians and carpenters anymore. So I started doing this with chemists and cosmetologists and medical PhD doctors. So it's kind of a same thing with different packaging. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Simon?
Hello. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Simon Espinosa. I flew from Chile. And 10 years ago, we founded what it is today the most watched cannabis media in Spanish worldwide. It's called Envola. We create content, educational content, and we use humor. I have a background in humor. I will be funnier as this go. Don't worry, have patience. We'll get there. But we use humor as a tool to make our content approachable by a community that has an urgent need of technical information, educational information, both in B2B and B2C. And we are one of the largest digital communities in the world for cannabis. Yes.
Thank you, Simon. And you've just come straight from the airport, right? So if you start to fall asleep, I'll punch you. So I think in the first place, I'd like to go to, again, a more general question. I think we heard this morning already that, you know, it's an interesting time for the industry. I think some people would say a challenging time. You know, regulations are not moving perhaps as quickly as some had hoped. Revenues, again, that revenue growth is moderating to some extent across different markets, categories, etc. So the first question, I guess, is in terms of what that means for marketing, how does marketing address that issue? What has changed in the last sort of 12 to 18 months around the way you address or approach media and marketing? And maybe, Petra, if I can start with you from a brand perspective, how are you kind of approaching it currently in terms of the current atmosphere and context in the industry?
From brand perspective, when we started, it was a lot of thinking of how we should do it because there were so many limitations. And we were definitely not wanting to address the influencers with only one reason, because we didn't want our products to be second best the next time when other people come and pay more or pay different amounts of money that we did. So that was a big no-no for us. So how do it then? And it was really interesting step, because social media bursted so much and there was no other way to do it. And the COVID was in all this time, so there were no shows and nothing like this. So we choose a different approach, and for local, I would say local, for Slovenia, we used approach to go to mass market. Mm-hmm. So we were selling in hundreds of shops in Slovenia. In every village, you could buy Nabi products. And that was the biggest way to, for us, it was a really nice way to be presented somewhere and to show ourselves, to get noticed. So brand awareness is something that people should get, and it's hard to be noticed if you're not there. So for Slovenia, this was a really crucial thing. And we have a shop in Ljubljana also, which is really, we got the shop for marketing reasons. Mm-hmm. It turned out that it was also a good selling point because of all the tourists and every people there. And regarding abroad, we choose shows. So, for example, shows like this, ICBC, we're here always. We just had a joke back there. Hi, you're still here, and congratulations, which is a kind of a big thing in cannabis business when you survive from year to year. We managed to survive, and we developed really well in these times. And also, thankfully, with this kind of events, we are able to present ourselves as a partner that is worth doing business with, and that we show ourselves in different perspective, that people see that we differ and stand out. Standing out, as I mentioned now, is something that is really important mm-hmm. In this kind of business. We try to stand out with packaging that we use. We try to stand out with ingredients that we use, with the approach that we have. So it's kind of finding a way to differ. I'm sure that everybody here knows what I'm talking about, and everybody there. That it's really important to put a point on yourself and say, okay, this is something that we do, and it's different from everything else you have. This is the most challenging thing to do in this kind of business, but I think we did a pretty good job till now.
Yes, and I guess the more challenging the industry in general becomes, the more important it is to be distinctive, etc. I think we can maybe come back to that. Simon, from an agency perspective, and again in terms of a more constrained environment and challenges that the industry face, how does that play out for you from an agency perspective? How can you contribute, and what kind of problems are you solving for your partners?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. We've been talking about this for a bit now, and I'm sure many of us, if we are company owners in the cannabis industry, wherever you're from, you've suffered quite a bit. Chances are these past years have not been the best for our industry. So exclusively talking about a marketing perspective in this area, we've seen marketing budgets shrinking. Many people aren't able to allocate as much money or assets or resources on marketing, which means also that they are letting go of some specific markets that require that marketing campaign set in place for them to be able to capitalize over those efforts, over the immense effort which is building a brand in this space. And in addition to that, we've seen all the restrictions that come from everywhere. Now, I think Michael have a really good point on a really good perspective on what's happening in Germany. But we've all known, or we've all have our accounts taken down in social media. I'm sure like you've seen that going. It's hard to get any kind of cannabis content out there without being highly restricted, shadow ban, or just taken down. So we've found some things in this very intricate maze. They're not stable, though. It changes because, like, the guidelines for social media change. So it is challenging, and it requires for us to be updated, and it requires for us to be, flexible also, to be everywhere, to understand how different platforms work. So, but what is also very interesting for me in this crisis, I would presume it could be like, I don't know if that's such a dramatic word, but it's been hard. So I know, like, we all seen it, and we all have friends in the space, so we know how it is. But it's also a really good opportunity for companies that are looking into the marketing space, understanding that many companies that had in-house marketing branches are not going to be able to continue with that. So a lot of the resources are moving to outsourcing these marketing resources. So it's an interesting opportunity for companies that are moving there to have high margin assets to provide for our industry. So I would say those are the two main areas in which we've been developing and investigating these past few years, trying to be a better asset for our fellow colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So Mika, I know you have particular experience with social media and so on, and I want to get to that in a few moments, but just before we get to that, and sticking with kind of the theme of challenges, there may be people in the audience who don't know exactly what will be possible or not possible in the German context moving forward once we have CanG and so on. So can you just talk a little bit about, I think largely what won't be possible in the German context, but just so we're all clear on that from a marketing perspective.
It's, I can say it in quite easy words. Cannabis used to be a part of the Narcotic Act, which meant that you were not allowed to advertise for cannabis, but which in reality meant you were not allowed to advertise strains, but companies were allowed to advertise their brand, which is a smart marketing approach was needed to, let me say, focus certain strains. But it's possible, it was possible, and now that cannabis is out of the Narcotic Act and into the new Cannabis Act, it's not unregulated, but it's out of the Narcotic Act and into the new Cannabis Act. But when it comes to advertising, it's actually the same like before, like it was in the Narcotic Act. But the new law mentions, for example, influencing, which was not mentioned before in the, which we call pharmaceutical advertisement law. We have a pharmaceutical advertisement prohibition in Germany. It's not allowed. But pharmaceutical companies are allowed to advertise for their company, for their brand. And actually now for cannabis, for recreational cannabis, it's all the same, but influencing is included. So we have to find, of course, nice, smart workarounds in my eyes, which means a brand should focus on their brand. I have a nice example for the alcohol brand, for alcohol branding. For example, all the big beer companies, they sponsor sport events, but it's not allowed to advertise for alcohol on sport events, of course. So what are they doing? They bring out an alcohol-free brand, which has the same logo like the alcohol brand, or it's red instead of blue, and then it's allowed to advertise for alcohol-free beer on a sports event. And I must just come back to Petra, and I have to contradict a little, because
drama.
If any company does their marketing themselves, we wouldn't sit here. So in my eyes, also on a small level, nowadays, a smart influencer marketing, a smart social media, it doesn't have to be done by influencers, but a smart social media marketing has a very big impact. What I must agree on, that in a small country like Slovenia, you have a lot of other marketing strategies which you can use because it's a small country, but compared to Spain or to Germany, it wouldn't be possible to do this kind of marketing Would it?
Direct trade marketing is difficult to scale. Yeah. So I want to give Petra a right of reply on that. So Petra, can you just talk a little bit about how you use social media and maybe some kind of key tips for anyone in the audience about approaching social media as a cannabis brand?
I would agree with what you had to say, Michael, because maybe I said influencers. A bit hard. It's a bit harsh to get it to all influencers, because I was addressing to the paid ones that are selling one product today and the other product tomorrow. So this is the only thing that I was addressing. But there are many ways to use influencers in a smart way, like you said, and combining your, I don't know, ideas with a really known person or doing something with that, it's completely different thing. So for us, our social media approach was a bit different, and also marketing approach regarding how we will present that our products are really good. So we choose the approach to tell people about the feel that they get from our product, not what this product does, but you try it and you feel it, and you will feel it. And it was a bit different because everybody was saying about anti-wrinkle, this does this and this does that, and every product has claims on what it does. We couldn't say anything about CBD, so how to do it if you cannot say anything? And we choose to talk about the feel. And it's showing off that we are gaining a lot of followers just because we are talking about the feels, different kind of feels. So how could you sleep? How do you dream if you can sleep? For example, is one of our things, and you get a product for that. And it doesn't say that it will help you sleep, but it says it in a different way. So this was kind of a way that we tried to get through all the banning that happens and so on. And people actually share our content. That's, I think, Simon will have a lot to say. I follow Simon, and he's everywhere, and everybody is sharing your content, which is really interesting, and he has a special approach. So it's kind of, again, to differ and to stand out.
Yeah.
That's all the magic.
It's almost like, Petra, it sounds like you're using poetry or something to be distinctive and ask people. But Simon, you use humor a lot in the work that you and your agency does, and the point of that, I guess, is not just to be funny. It's because that enhances the quality of the interactions you're getting on the social media sites and prevents or protects you a little bit from things like shadow banning and all that sort of stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, it has many layers, I would say, and thank you for your words. What we use, actually, what we're based on is science. It's all fully educational content, and that's something that can transit and move through social media without as many restrictions as like other marketing content for cannabis products. This should be very well known by this point. Educational content, if it's marked and tagged as educational content, have like way more chances to not be shadow banned or deleted from any given platform. That being said, humor has also like a different perspective and some many other layers. For starters, we know that we cannot pay for promotion, so chances are that if we have a cannabis account, a cannabis social media account, we're gonna need organic following and organic engagement. This is something that's also basic and should be very well known at this point, that all your resources need to be allocated in this form of distribution for social media content or audiovisual content for that matter. And then this is something that it's a little bit more hard to measure, but I think our experience can tell us that there's something else in our community that is something a little bit more intangible, but not less real, which is our own culture. And our own culture has a comedy background that has been lying there forever. It was comedians who were among the first activists for cannabis, just as much as like the hip hop urban culture as well. But they've been there, and we have, and I would say this for all of us. I hope I'm right. I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think we have predilection for laughter, and we look for health and for a medical experience also in laughter, because it has helped us deal with a lot of what prohibition and stigma has done in us. And comedy and humor, it's a therapeutical form of culture as well. And I think that that's not necessarily explained, but it's something that is also like lying there and is inherent to our culture. And we tapped into that, and we noticed that when you laugh, you share. And that's something that you cannot pay for in like advertisement. So that's an interesting tool that we've been using, and we try to make science funny. We try to make it approachable. We try to talk to our community in a very genuine way, the way we are. And this is also very important and should be very well known by now, after we've seen what happened with celebrity brands in our industry. We've all seen it, right? There are exceptions, of course, but we all know what happens there. So being legit, I would say, or genuine and coherent to the community is something that humor does very well for us.
And I guess it might also be the case that cannabis users have a very high detection level for inauthenticity as well. So, I mean, speaking of being authentically yourself, Mika, can I ask you to just talk a little bit about your experience with social media, some of the challenges you've had, and how you it's an ongoing process, I guess, in terms of continuing to try and get your message across and be heard, etc.
When it comes to cannabis, there are a lot of challenges. There are legal challenges, there are stigmatizing challenges. So all in all, I would say you have to be a storyteller. Influencers, they have to be a storyteller. You have to build a story around your brand, around your product that people want to listen to. And not the product has to be really in focus, you know. It doesn't have to be in focus. The most important thing is your story, you know. And of course the product has to be mentioned and everybody has to know what it's about, your story. But the story is much more important than the rest. And this is also what I say, we are good storytellers as influencers. You know, you're a comedian, so we are professional storytellers. So if anybody of your companies has a good storyteller who can act in front of the camera, make him your social media influencer. If your company doesn't have one, you should really think about social media marketing, because social media marketing is the most attractive marketing, the most successful marketing at the moment, and this will not change anymore. I used to be an author. I used to publish a Cannabis magazine in 2004. We started, and that was a very successful model. Meanwhile, all cannabis magazines are fighting to survive, you know, and even micro-influencers have an income, while the big magazines struggle to survive. So there is no way back, and because cannabis is so limited, we have to tell stories, and in the stories we have to avoid everything why cannabis is stigmatized. So, and influencers know how to do that. They are professionals in that. So if you need a product to be promoted legally and with a nice story, ask a professional influencer to do that.
A direct question, I guess. How often do you find yourself shadow banned, and when that happens, how do you deal with it? How do you make sure it doesn't happen in the first place?
Meanwhile, I have more problems that a lot of my customers are shadow banned. I'm kind of experienced. I know what I can do on social media and what not, but my customers, they are not as experienced as I am. And for example, on Instagram, I had 3 customers being shadow banned within the last 3 months. Then I can, of course, not fulfill my contract I have with them. So I also say, if you are my customer, you also have to care about your own shadow bans and how you act on social media as a company. Because if you spend money on influencing and your own account is shadow banned, the influencer cannot do anything. And this is very tricky. So this is not a lot of people think because they have a private Instagram, which is running quite well, okay, I do my business Instagram myself, and no, you have to, this is a real professional job, and even I employ people for my Instagram account, and for my Facebook account, and for my YouTube account, because it's a very, very complicated, and it's complicated and it takes a lot of time to run it, and you don't see it. If you click on my account, you don't see that. But there's a lot of work and money behind it, and this is why influencing is not so cheap as a lot of people expect that.
Not as easy as it looks, obviously. So we've got just less than 10 minutes left, so I just want to make sure that we get some questions from the audience, if there are. So if you can put your hands up, anyone who wants to ask. So there's one here.
It'll happen. There you go. Let's hear it for the panel. You had a question.
Hello, I'm coming from a legal background here. When you plan or brainstorm on advertising on social media, do you usually look at terms and conditions of Facebook, Instagram, and what do they say on cannabis or CBD? Or, because that's something you always need to look at.
As an influencer, for me, it's hard to communicate with them. There are also no strict rules or no real rules about cannabis marketing, because every country has its own law. So Facebook, YouTube, Meta and Google, they decided to make their own cannabis rules, which they do not really communicate. It's only about soft drugs, and I know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do, but I cannot look it up in a book. So I have to find trial and error. And meanwhile, I'm expert in the trial and error principle. And I didn't get a strike for, I think, 1.5 years, and I didn't get a shadow ban for, I think, on Instagram for a year. So, but only because I'm experienced, and there are even words you're not allowed to use. Yeah. You know, it's tricky. So trial and error, because the big companies do not communicate about this topic with the influencers. They just don't communicate. I even tried it with a manager who's really good, well connected to YouTube, and even they didn't answer his requests from a professional YouTube manager. So I have no idea.
There's a dispensary in Colorado that you're not allowed to do TV ads of your dispensary, so they made TV ads of the businesses next door to them.
Everyone around them, yeah.
Right, like, come and get a pedicure. It's right next door to the dispensary. Right, come and buy a sandwich from this place. It's right next door to the dispensary. So that actually worked. We have a question over here.
Hi again. I am Graça, the founder of Canna Portugal. And I just want to remind that when it comes to the marketing in the legal industry, we need to think that where we are is one of the biggest ways to promote cannabis in the legal industry, because we tend to forget that forums, conferences, expos, fairs, and so on, this is not fair, because we are all together and we are sharing our histories, and we are doing such a good job giving this huge contribution for the marketing in the legal industry. So I dare to ask a big applause to Alex Rogers, who has done such a great job doing this marketing and helping all of us improving our businesses. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Here we go.
I'm Max Kobe with Abstracts. Thank you, Michael and panel, for sharing your knowledge. It's great to be here. My question for you guys is, we're constantly challenged with the shifting rules on Instagram and things, and so we think adding stars in between canna or not spelling it correctly might help us. I'm just wondering if you could grace us with maybe your top 3 tips to avoid getting shadow banned.
Do you want to disclose that information, Mika?
Try to avoid the word cannabis. Try to avoid consumption in front of camera, and try to avoid anything that might be seen as that it's addressed to minors or children. Anything. even a pet or something in the picture. So those three things.
I notice on my account that if I post a silly cannabis meme, right? Instagram doesn't care. They'll send it out to everybody. But if I post a picture of cannabis and say, I got this from these people, then they're like, hey, you can't do that. So you have to find a way to be roundabout. You can't just be like, come buy the shit over here.
And humor, like, as you say, humor.
Humor's big.
We reach over like 2 million people every month, and we have consumption on camera, and we use the word cannabis. And what was the other thing you mentioned? Well, we do all those three, I'm sure.
Children.
Yeah, but yeah, what we do also is we tag our content as educational cannabis content, and we ensure that it is educational. We also like tag it for over 18 before it's published. We don't let YouTube to do the work for us, because then you get like revised, which is I don't know who I'm looking who made the question. Okay. Like, and then we also ensure that, as Michael noticed, also it's not focused on the product or the cannabis specifically, so that the content is not like a promotional content for that, but it's a story or it's around something that congregates you. And this is also very important because it generates way more engagement with your community when you're actually giving something that helps, whether it's a tip for how to grow your cannabis, or a tutorial on how to use a vaporizer, or how to roll a joint, or any of those things. Something that provides a useful tool for our community, it's going to go a long way, because we don't have any tools, we don't have any resources. That's what's common in our communities, that we don't have the information, the education. There is no universities, there's no a lot of authorized sources to get information. So oh nice, someone brought a dog. Good for you though. I'll take the dog questions.
What you're saying, though.
That question's kind of rough.
Yeah. I will answer in barking. No, but yeah, using these elements, providing useful tools, providing educational assets for the community would generate a deeper engagement, and you will know and find out by yourselves that how deep is this gap of knowledge that we're missing and we're eagering as a community.
All right, one last one.
Can I add some?
Yes, please.
You didn't like my answer.
I loved your answer, and I agree totally with that. But I would like to add something, and that would be write poetry, like you said. Poetry, I think it's something, and let people feel what you have to say. I think that's one of the things to do on Instagram or Facebook.
Poetry is good. Okay, one last question right here. I'm sorry.
Okay, Dr.
Poetry is good.
Chicago. Are you guys talking to chatbots, AI chatbots right now? Number one. And number two, what is going to happen with their AI influence on your work in terms of marketing of cannabis, let's say the next 2 to 5 years?
Simon, that sounds like one for you. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's a really good question. We didn't speak about AI, but it's a major thing, of course. I'm sure we've all aware of what it can do for us in so many aspects. There's an AI for everything now. Generating SEO, what's the word? Optimized, sorry. SEO optimized text for cannabis without using the word cannabis could be one thing. But I can speak about our experience as company. So as soon as like the first GPT came out, I hired someone to actually train our staff in AI. So we're using it on a daily basis. We actually use to create video that has cannabis backgrounds, self-generated or so. So we are using it now, and it can be very helpful to avoid mistakes when creating content for starters. I don't know if that answers the question that you did.
Will it ever write poetry, though, is the question.
What?
Will it ever write poetry?
I've asked, like, I'm a writer myself, so I try to do some poetry in GPT and it still sucks. I'm sure it's gonna get better, but it's really bad poetry so far. So you're safe. Me, not so much. No, but as long as we use it in a creative way, I think it can be a lot of help. We are using it right now when we have a few shows that you can see how we use it. It's not the content; it's a tool, right?
High as hell in Spain. Check. High as hell in Spain. Barcelona is very nice. I don't have the rest. It's the beginning
Needs
of a haiku.
work, I think.
I was writing a haiku. I was trying to write a haiku.
Haiku.
Haiku. I think we're out of time. Let's hear it again.
Thank you very much, everyone.
For Shane and Petra and Michael and Simone. I would like more food. There you go. That's the end. High as hell in Spain. Barcelona is very nice. I would like more food. Boom. Or the tapas are great. There you go. That's the way. It's more depth that way. All right, this is the International Cannabis Business Conference, Barcelona, 2024, or I guess what do you say, 2024? I don't know. 2024? I just like to say it, 2024. I'm just going to walk around saying that all the time, 2024, 2024.